Hi, everybody. How you doing? Crystal here. Welcome to the Starseeds and Lightworkers Collective. And I am so happy to have you here. We have a really amazing show tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have our special guest, Miss Maurene Morgan, who used to be the former director for MUFON in Washington. And she is an absolute treasure. She's a plethora of so much information honestly on a variety of topics, but in particular about obviously about UFOs or UAPs as they call them now. But anyways, I prefer the word UFO. So I'm just putting it out there. But really, tonight we have a really great show. It's called The Apocalypse in the Age of Aquarius. Now, it's not about apocalypse so much as it is about how we're as in the Age of Aquarius, how we can interpret certain signs and symbols that are going to be shown to us. So tonight's particular, she'll be focusing on the Chris Bledsoe story, which is very, very interesting and rather recent, and that's what I like about it is that it's a very recent story, and it's going to be giving us a lot of information about what we can expect coming up in the next couple of years. And as I've often mentioned on the show, that the year of 2025, 2026, and in particular 2027 are some of the most important years for humanity. So we are going to be in for a lot of change, and there's a lot coming up. So Maureen is going to walk us through that. And before we begin, I just wanted to let people know if you could please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us a lot. Especially if you're new, subscribe to the channel and you'll be able to get all the information on our upcoming episodes. And as well, I wanted to also let people know about our Native American story and music series that we have on a part of our channel, Quantum Portals. And we have a new segment coming up, I think later this month. I think it's the 21st that we're going to be posting our latest segment with Luke Blue Eagle. And he's going to be discussing Native American stories and traditions. So please keep an eye out for that one. But without further ado, hi Maureen, how you doing?
All of you guys out there.
Yeah.
I hope to really present an important story that not a whole lot of people know about. This is a presentation that I gave about 6 weeks ago to the Ocean Shores UFO Summit, about 400 people or whatever, and they were really kind of bowled over about it because again it has a lot of information most people are not familiar with.
Yeah.
But anyway, with that I will get started. um, First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, because I feel that the star seeds and light workers are and experiencers, believe me, are where it's at. So brace yourself for a wild ride into uncharted
All
territories.
right. Buckle up,
And now
everybody.
we better I suppose we better get in. First of all,
Yeah, sure.
green share.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everybody can now see the first title slide.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. First of all, you should know that apocalypse does not mean the end of the world. It means to reveal, to disclose. Okay, now, whew, you had me worried there for a while, but
Yeah.
I always have to do a fair use statement because of the material here that's not necessarily my own, or it doesn't necessarily reflect your views. Okay, so for the benefit of you guys who have not ever heard about, well, first of all, I should ask. I'll just go with my script because that way I can kind of stay on our target.
Okay.
So we'll start off with the two important books on the UFO phenomena have recently been published, each with a title that defines a specific reality. The first book is Lou Elizondo's Imminent, and I suspect many of you are familiar with Lou. You've probably read his book, um, and you may have even seen him on a number of different podcasts. So, if you're interested in UFOs, you would have to be living under a rock not to be familiar with Lou, the former career CIA counterintelligence operator. He promotes a national defense threat narrative. In fact, the definition of imminent implies impending danger, threat, and peril. In other words, the ET enemy is at your door, but no fear, the Pentagon is there to protect you. And the second book is Chris Bledsoe's UFO of God, which I'll be focusing on today, because I have found that although many people are familiar with Lou Elizondo, very few people are familiar with Chris Bledsoe's story.
Mm-hmm.
So the title purposely implies that UFOs are God. Um, and Chris, who is arguably the world's most researched and valid UFO contactee, is a humble man whose story encompasses missing time, trauma, miraculous healings, interactions with intelligent shape-shifting orbs, light beings, portals, unexplained phenomena, and visitations with the Lady in White, who prophesizes great changes taking place in 2026. Chris's experiences showed for the first time that orbs and burning balls of light are more than naturally occurring Earth lights, ball lightning, or spirits of the deceased. They are UFOs. Think about the 10,000 fireballs or Foo Fighters pilots reported stalking their planes globally during World War II. Most importantly, his story is a spiritual journey of awakening that champions love, peace, support for humanity, and reconnecting with nature and the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
While both Elizondo and Bledsoe are UFO communicators, their messages could not be more different. So you're not alone if you've never heard of Chris. I ignored him for years as too woo because I was still caught up in the nuts and bolts version of ufology.
Mm-hmm.
That is until about 9 months ago when I heard him recount his experiences with UFOs and the paranormal in an online interview. I was gobsmacked by Chris's story and ordered UFO of God before the show ended. Maybe you guys will too. So I want to make it clear that I am not validating Chris Bledsoe's story or his beliefs about the spiritual nature of the phenomena or his being able to manifest orbs by humbly praying for them. I am a messenger, not the message.
Okay.
More importantly, I hope to convey the message that high ranking officials from NASA, CIA, DIA, DOD, FBI, NRO, NSA, British MOD, US military, and the Vatican, as well as scientists and academics, have been virtually obsessed with his story. These officials are often the ones who make astounding claims validating him, often after experiencing life changing events firsthand. For example, Colonel John Alexander, who you may know from the movie Men Who Stare at Goats,
Mm-hmm.
came to the Bledsoe property to debunk Chris, only to have a huge UFO appear directly above him. He left a believer. Oddly, the government and intelligence communities have been far more receptive to the Bledsoe story than many so-called ufologists, perhaps for the same reason I ignored him. So this should all give us reason to open our minds to a new perspective on the UFO phenomena. That orbs, or plasmoids, as plasma physicists call them, exhibit lifelike behaviors and complexities, suggesting high levels of intelligence. That orbs are the UFO phenomena. The material world is not what you think it is, and there is a spiritual component. I wonder if Chris's story resonates with me because over the past decade, I have spoken to hundreds of experiencers like you, leaving me to ponder the very nature of reality and consciousness. So please note that I have created all the slides using PowerPoint,
Mm-hmm.
no AI here.
Mm-hmm.
So much of my presentation is excerpted or paraphrased from UFO of God because you need to hear Chris's story in his own voice.
Okay.
So, who is Chris Bledsoe and why is his story so important? Before 9/11, the North Carolina man was a construction mogul who built more than 130 houses a year in the Fayette area. The highly respected Bledsoe family had lived in the town of Mount Hope for generations. Chris was deacon in his Pentecostal Holiness Church, a licensed commercial pilot, and a multimillionaire able to provide an affluent country club lifestyle for his family. After 9/11, Chris was unable to sell dozens of already built homes. He was bankrupted. Penniless and unable to support his family, his wife, and 4 children, Chris believed himself to be a personal and professional failure. To make worse, Chris had experienced multiple near death experiences, personal tragedies, and suffered from Crohn's, an inflammatory bowel disease that causes extreme pain and suffering. On January 8, 2007, this 46-year-old, deeply religious man walked away from three construction workers and his 17-year-old son, Chris Jr., who were fishing on the Cape Fear River, and hiked deep into the woods. Desperate and on the verge of ending his life, Chris cried out to the heavens, "Whoever is up there, help me!" As if hearing his plea, a red-orange ball of fire as big as a house appeared on the horizon. Two more appeared until, oops, I'll get back here. Two more appeared until all three were above his head. Awestruck and mesmerized, Chris watched the swirling flames silently hover. He felt an intense connection with them, as though the things were watching him watch them. The next thing Chris remembered was returning to the river where he left the guys fishing, thinking he had been gone for about 20 minutes. Oddly unafraid, Chris wanted to tell the others about the amazing balls of fire. "Where have you been?" one of them asked. "What are you talking about? I've only been gone a few minutes." "No, you weren't. You've been gone all night." Chris remained incredulous. "Where's Chris Jr.? He's been gone for 2 hours looking for you." In a panic, Chris ran into the pitch black thicket with no flashlight, pushing through brush, briars, and thorns, looking for his son. Something grabbed his arm. "Dad, why did you leave me? Where did you go? There were these creatures with glowing red eyes. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream." "Junior, I've only been gone for 20 minutes. "No, Dad, you've been gone all night." As they walked back to the river, Junior described how two floating red spears, about the size of bowling balls, blocked the path. The balls of fire shifted into little transparent entities, with one always watching him while the other was picking up and looking at things. He dove into the undergrowth trying to hide. Chris Jr. begged his dad, "Please, please take me home." Back at the river, Chris Sr.'s three fishing friends dismissed their tales as bunk until one of them pointed up in the sky and shrieked, "Oh my God!" 9 balls of light were gathered in a multicolored circle directly above them. The circle began to rotate and then scatter across the sky. The three of the orbs began to flash and descend into the woods across the river. They were now about 45 feet across, pulsating a brilliant white and electric blue light like the blinding light from a welder's torch. All hell broke loose. Chris jumped into the driver's seat of his truck and sped away from the river. He looked back and saw two of the red-orange balls of light still hovering where he originally saw them in the woods near the river. However, the third was now a blue-white orb hovering above the truck. The orb instantly morphed into an estimated 45-foot-long, oblong-shaped object lying on its side in front of the truck, blocking the road. Floating about 5 feet off the pavement, the object was the same brilliant electric white light as the orb circling in the sky back at the river. Rays spun around its surface, flaring off in spiky bolts as if charged with energy. The radiant egg stayed there, blazing otherworldly beams. Out of nowhere, they heard 3 gunshots from a shooter who was never identified. The egg began to rotate, pivoting its nose directly at the truck. Just when the men feared they were about to be rammed or vaporized, the object rose, skimmed over the roof of the truck, shot up in the sky, and disappeared. Excuse me. A buzzing static fell over the truck like it had been charged with collateral energy. Now able to escape, Chris floored it with the guy screaming, "Faster!" Hang on a second here. But the show was not over. They spotted another orb over the tree line, keeping pace with them, no matter how fast Chris drove. About a mile down the road, they came alongside 200 acres of timber that had recently been clear cut. They all hunted in that area and knew there was only woodlands behind the clear cut. Just above the stumps, a whole city skyline's worth of pulsating lights glistered at them, sending the 3 co-workers and Chris's son into another level of frenzy. Despite spotting yet another orb hovering over a power line, Chris had to keep calm. Ahead was a curve on the road known as Dead Man's Curve. He slowed the truck, despite the men's urging, when an overwhelming surge of emotion overcame him. Suddenly, every detail came back to him when he was 20 years old and came across an overturned car that did not make the curve. Chris stopped and pulled out the woman driver. To his horror, she was his new wife who died in his arms. Racked with guilt for 25 years, Chris no longer felt at fault for her death. The orbs present above the site somehow seemed to fill him with peace. As they drove, the four men and the boy spotted a huge black rectangular shaped silhouette with a row of glowing square windows hovering just above nearby high voltage power lines. The craft's enormity took Chris's breath away. He wanted to get out and to watch it, but the terrified men were howling like hell at him to speed up. Chris, go! Damn it, Chris, get out of here! The huge craft remained over the power lines as he sped away to drop off the first guy at home. They passed several cars pulled over to watch the still hovering craft. After he dropped off the last of the three co-workers, Chris and Junior finally headed home, but he had a gut feeling the other shoe was about to drop, and he was not wrong. Thankfully, his wife and three other children were away visiting family. With Junior still in a state of panic, Chris went around the house turning on all the lights and locking all the doors. He turned on the TV expecting to hear a breaking news about a worldwide alien invasion. Nothing. Then he heard the womp 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 of a big helicopter heading in the direction of the river. They had not lost their minds. Something had happened there. All of a sudden, his father's 15 hunting dogs and a kennel next door barked and wailed as though they were fighting for their lives. Afraid thieves were trying to break into his father's garage, Chris went outside to check, despite Junior's pleas. Please, Daddy, please, don't go out there. Please, Daddy, please. Anger overcame his dread of encountering something strange, and Chris grabbed a gun to deal with whoever or whatever was out there. Oops. Hang on. Oh, there we are. My finger is too fast.
No problem.
So Chris sprinted over to the edge of the woods and suddenly saw a brilliant, blinding light by the tree line. Before he reached it, a powerful humming static reverberated around his body. A painful, prolonged zap ran through him, stopping him in his tracks. In front of him, flickering from total invisibility into a translucent moonlight glow, stood two beings with red eyes and elongated, upward pointing triangles on their chests. Chris shook in terror. I'm sorry, you got me. I surrender. A being responded telepathically. You do not understand. We are not here to hurt you. We are here to help you. Their eyes telepathically communicated to him the importance of all living beings. A hunter his whole life, Chris was sickened by the murderous tool cradled in his arms. At that moment, his dog came running towards him and the beings disappeared. Shocked and befuddled, Chris ran into the house in a state of mourning and regret for all the harm he had done to innocent creatures. Without telling Junior what he had seen, he raised the blinds enough to crack open a window, open enough to have a smoke to quiet his nerves. He slammed down the blinds. There, illuminated in the floodlighted backyard, was another being, larger and taller than the others, walking towards the house. Chris yelled, Junior, we got to get out of here right now. They jumped into the truck and drove to a hayfield 5 miles away and parked in the middle of it, spending the night watching in every direction. Folks, all of this happened during the first 12 hours of the Bledsoe family's 18-year journey into an alternate reality that continues to this day. Pseudo-skeptics and debunkers maintain that Chris was just having a psychological breakdown from the stress, but most of these events were witnessed by his 17-year-old son, 3 construction workers, an unknown shooter, and drivers who stopped their cars to watch the huge rectangular craft hover over the power lines. As if things could not get worse for him, rumors about Chris seeing little green men spread like wildfire. Along with disbelief came judgment of his character, sanity, and reputation. Overnight, the Bledsoe family were forced outside what is considered acceptable. In his conservative community, anything not accounted for in the holy book was either a sinful folly or the work of the devil. He was now seen as demonically possessed. Preachers came unbidden to his property to sprinkle holy water, as if the ground itself needed to be purged of some satanic curse he had brought onto his family and community. Social service threatened to have him removed from the home. Chris was banned from the church and shunned. His 4 children were mocked and ridiculed by kids, teachers, and preachers alike for having a crazy father. Chris could not find work because he was considered unreliable and just plain crazy. The once multimillionaire could not put food on the table that he did not grow himself. With a breach of trustworthiness undermining their entire social existence and paranormal activity occurring daily, the Bledsoe family entered a period they called the 5 years of darkness. Orbs, beings in the house and out, shadow beings, even an iridescent, shimmering, elongated ice cream cone-like triangle was seen by his wife and kids while driving. Nothing could be filmed without destroying the cameras or cell phones. Moreover, the activity did not occur when people outside the family were there. Unable to document all the paranormal activity, Chris felt like the butt of some interdimensional joke. On the 4th of July, following the initial river incident in 2007, the Bledsoe family were given an aerial display over their house that outshone the fireworks seen in the distance. A house-sized fireball morphed into a blazing squashed egg with swirling energy inside, then morphed into a square before turning back into an orb and speeding off. After many months of living in a purgatory of not knowing whether their experiences were a blessing or a curse, Chris filled a UFO report with the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. While the field investigator did an excellent job, the organization betrayed the Bledsoe family, as did the Discovery Channel when it made a hit piece called UFOs Over Earth, the Fayette incident. Both MUFON and the Discovery Channel treated his family with great disrespect. Worse, continuous reruns of UFOs over Earth fueled the ridicule fire. Chris suspected that there was an agenda to destroy his credibility. This down here on the bottom right, you see his drawing that he made for the MUFON report of the little beings that he had seen out in the backyard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the only bright spots during the 2007 to 2012 years of darkness was the unannounced appearance at the Bledsoe home in 2008 of a top NASA scientist, Hal Provenmire. Provenmire also had security clearances with the CIA, DOD, and NRO. He had interned under Wernher von Braun, worked with J. Allen Hynek on Project Blue Book, and mapped the moon for the Apollo missions. He later acknowledged that he had been dispatched from NASA to debunk the Bledsoe's MUFON report.
So NASA sent him to debunk
to
it?
Basically to debunk the.
Wow.
They took it seriously enough to debunk him.
Okay. I thought I hated NASA before, but I guess not.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So he disclosed to the Bledsoe family that NASA's interest was piqued by 2 of Chris's descriptions in the MUFON report. First, the glassy, elongated triangles on the chests of the beings. In fact, elongated triangles appear on several intelligence agency logos. Note the similarity between the U.S. Space Force logo in the middle and the Star Trek logo on the right. Was it just lack of imagination? Or, second, the elongated object blocking the road was an identical match to the 2004 Nimitz Tic Tac UFO that was not disclosed to the public until 10 years later in the New York Times. Unable to debunk any part of Chris's report, Hal became a beloved family friend until his untimely death in 2019. He told the Bledsoes in 2008 that official government disclosure would happen in 2025 and that there are structures on the moon. Recall, Hal mapped the moon for shuttle launches.
Okay. Can I just stop you? Can you go back 2 slides? because you showed, yeah, the USA Space Force Space
Uh-huh.
Delta. Why is
Oh, I
why
should point
is
out.
there an Egyptian pharaoh?
Okay,
What
keep that in
the
mind. Keep
hell?
keep that in mind. In fact, yeah,
Okay,
keep that specific
okay,
U.S. Space Delta. Keep that in mind.
that's, oh
You,
my
you
god.
have the Sphinx with the star. I believe Star of Regulus. We will be getting back to that.
Or the or maybe it's sort of like it's I don't know,
Oh no,
Orion or something. I don't know.
it comes back later.
Yeah.
It's very
Okay.
important.
Okay.
Okay,
Fine.
we're building up to it. We're
Yeah.
building up the suspense.
Okay.
And also, you can see here on the far left uh, another drawing, a painting that Chris Bledsoe had made. I think it was 2007 or 2008 of the little being that he saw in the backyard
Mm-hmm.
with the elongated triangles. Okay.
Fine.
Okay. Now, Easter 2012 and 2013, Divine Encounters and the Lady's Prophecies. Okay. Let me get back here. As the years went by, I get distracted. As the years went by, paranormal activity on his property never let up, nor did the communities treating him like somebody possessed by demons. Chris blamed himself for his family's destitution and suffering. While his Crohn's disease had mysteriously disappeared, it was replaced by an equally painful and crippling rheumatoid arthritis. The night before Easter Sunday in 2012, Chris went outside, looked up at the night sky, and vowed never to speak about his experience in public again. It only caused his family pain, and he wondered, was fear, confusion, and ridicule the point of it all? Chris went to bed exhausted and heartbroken. Now, arise! A thunderous command shook Chris from his sleep. He could make out dim holographic outlines of shadow beings moving towards the foot of his bed. They willed him to get dressed and led him out the back door. The three shimmering shadows were gliding towards the dog kennel. One of them turned around and extended its arms towards him. Take this. This is yours. You must keep it. Chris reached out and accepted what was dropped into his hands. It was the shape of a small Chihuahua dog without head, limbs, or tail. It was alive and squirming and had spiked quills like a hedgehog. It hurt his hands, so he placed it in the dog kennel and closed the door so it could not get out.
Sorry, I hate to say this, but is this like can we go back to the other slide again?
Which
Uh
one?
okay, yeah, just the one before this.
This will all be self-explanatory if
No,
I can
no,
just continue.
and that's not it. It's because it looks like this thing had didn't have. Yeah, no, the one after. It looks like this is like what, a tribble.
No, this is he's holding a hedgehog.
Oh, okay.
This is a hedgehog that was put in his. Let me read that little thing back again.
Yeah, because it said it had no arms or limbs or
Yeah,
anything.
that's
It was
right.
just,
Again, this is the closest thing. This is
yeah, I know.
PowerPoint montages. This is a hedgehog that he's supposed to be holding in his hands.
Okay.
It is the shape of a small Chihuahua dog without head, limbs, or tail. It was alive and squirming and had spiked quills like a hedgehog. So that's the purpose of that. Okay, so that's him holding this creature without head, limbs, or tail.
Yeah, that's why I meant
Quill.
it sounded like a tribble, which sort of is alive but doesn't have any
Ah,
head.
the thing
Limbs.
is squirming and it is alive. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Before Chris could run back to the house, a pair of powerful blasts of air hit him, knocking him down on his back. Chris looked up to see a black hole the size of a car in the trees. A huge black bull with horns charged out of the void and leaped over him. Stars showed through its translucent body. As he pushed himself up, a beautiful woman appeared floating above him in a circle of light. Chris felt cradled by the soft light of her presence. Without her lips moving, she said in a high, clear voice, "You know why I'm here." Somehow Chris knew what she meant, and a wave of embarrassment, remorse, and sorrow overtook him. "You made an agreement. You cannot quit now." He asked her about the lump of living fur that was placed in his hands. She said, "It is an icon of humanity. directionless, senseless, without head or tail, in dire need of protection and guidance. She did not say why she had been chosen to do this work, but she would protect him and his family. This is your burden. You must bear it, were the last words he heard before she disappeared, before she vanished. Chris knew he must comply with the lady's command by telling his story in public at every opportunity. Even though his Crohn's disease no longer bothered him, the rheumatoid arthritis that developed soon afterwards crippled him before he could carry out her orders. In the early hours of Easter 2013, a brilliant bluish white light drew him out of his bed and through an opening in the ceiling. 3 tall, glowing beings were calling him. Chris knew them. They were the guardians, the angels. He hears many voices, a choir, singing praises of love and joy. The beings are taking him to the mother. She sent them for him. Chris found himself in a clear, glowing bubble. Below him, the earth is getting smaller and smaller as he glided high over the pyramids in Egypt. The bubble suddenly floated him back to earth. Chris was now walking into a steep canyon awash with brilliant blue light white. He felt hot sand beneath his feet. He sees the lady. The shimmering light emanates from this beautiful, radiant young woman who is seated on a massive throne carved into the recesses of the towering canyon wall. She stands up and floats above him. The lady looks very sad. She introduces herself. I am Hathor, and throughout times I have been known by many names. The Lady of Guadalupe, Lady of Fatima, many more. I am the divine feminine, the manifestation of the universal force of love. I have existed from before creation, throughout all time. I am the mother of all, the Holy Spirit. I am the third part of the Trinity. The lady then revealed to Chris, we are living in the time that is written about in the book of Revelations in the Bible and ancient texts. The age is about to change. It's the end of time. The new age will bring peace and love peace and the love of the mother and the divine feminine. Nothing can stop it. She warned that there are dark forces, both physical and non-physical, at the helm of humanity, casting the phenomenon in a negative light. It is scripting end times prophecy through the book of Revelations to wipe us out. They are trying to snuff out God. The evil alien threat will be the grand deception. These dark forces have a very bad agenda for humanity. They prey on it, almost parasitic, by attaching themselves through fear. They engineer fear. If this view wins out, humanity will be set on a path to ruin. Oh, I should have had this on before. Anyway, this should have been on before. Here you have the Lady of Fatima, who appeared before, it's estimated 90,000 people who witnessed the miracle of the sun whirling around in the sky on October 13th, 1917. And there is the Lady of Guadalupe, who appeared in 1530 in Mexico. Her story, and this is an image of, over here on the left, the image of the Lady of Fatima. And the story of the Lady of Guadalupe is so extraordinary that you could do a whole presentation on the weirdness, the extraordinariness of this lady.
Yeah.
So
you have to come back and do that presentation.
Yeah, believe me, I'm going to get to that at the end.
Yeah.
I am heading that direction. Okay, so visions appeared in Chris's mind of a great destructive battle with missiles being fired from Israel into Iran. Now remember, this is 2013.
Oh boy.
The lady said that the missiles will be stopped. Destroying the earth would not be permitted. There are difficult times ahead. A flood of visions rushed into his dazed head that he could hardly process. Famine, plague, and unrest are just over the horizon. She said that every living being, including the earth, is conscious and warned that fear and negativity were lowering our vibration. War and the fear of war. Fear throws everything out of balance. Everything is a living consciousness and has a part of life on this planet, and we do not have the right to take its life. It is all about nature. It is alive, and we live within it. And there's a lot of nature we cannot see, forces that are here but unseen. She went on. The earth is beginning to shake and tremble and self-destruct. It is encoded to rid itself of negativity and darkness. And the process has already started. And the only way to stop it is through love. I mean, she's not even asking you to give up coffee.
I hope not.
Yeah, that's right. Everything stops if you have to give up coffee.
Yeah, for sure.
So kept seeing images flashing, beautiful living colors flashing in and out, and amazing things that were coming. The lady said to Chris, the apocalypse is to reveal that which is hidden, to tell the truth, that we have a choice, to live in fear and die in fear, or to live in love and find happiness and peace. It must be told. It has been mandated to be told. She continues, after a period of turmoil, a shift into the Age of Aquarius will bring back the balance of the divine feminine energy, and with it 1,000 years of peace. She warned, trouble is coming, and we're going to wake the people up to introduce the world to us. Chris was still trying to take it all in when the lady said, when the red star Regulus aligns just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come to the world, into the world. There will be a shift in the knowledge of humanity. A whole new consciousness is coming. That truth will bring love and peace upon this world, and it will be the mother energy that brings about the light and the nourishment and the love to this world. Because the man energy is so rough and warlike, it must be moved to the side. She told Chris that women will rise up. They will become empowered and lose the fear that they have carried forever. Humanity must awaken to a new knowledge that is all about love, not fear, before it is too late. The lady told Chris he must tell his story. If he does not, blood will be on his hands. If something bad does happen, she said, it is your work to get the word out.
Wow, no pressure. No pressure, right?
Well, I kind of feel it's the same with me.
Yeah, well,
I have to get the word out.
Blood on my hands? No thanks.
Well, yeah, because, he's telling the story, and I feel that others need to go out there and interpret it for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then she then tells him, you must stay the course. You can never waver. My angels and I will never let you out of our sight. We will allow you to photograph the phenomena and the people you need to know on your path and to guide them. Chris had no idea that Regulus is the star at the base of the constellation Leo. Later, astronomers told him that this rare alignment will occur near Easter 2026, and excuse me, and that Regulus, the king star, was extremely important for all ancient civilizations. Nor did he know that Hathor is known as the Egyptian goddess who birthed the universe from her womb.
Okay.
So now, however, it appears that many in the intelligence community are already aware of the Sphinx Regulus prophecy. How else do you explain these logos?
Okay.
And again, you remember the one of the elongated triangle that you saw before.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are at least 9 or 10 different intelligence agencies. Oh, here you have it.
Yeah.
Intelligence agency logos that have either the Sphinx or the Sphinx with the star. And again,
but you know what's interesting? If you go back, to the two logos ago. Sorry, yeah. So what's interesting on the far right here with the USA Space Force is that it says that when the king looks upon the star, and what is this guy doing? He's a pharaoh who's looking upon the star.
The star of Regulus is shining into the eyes of the Sphinx, and the eyes of the Sphinx are looking at the star.
Exactly, and that's what that is. So I find that kind of interesting. That the USA Space Force, the logo that's looking at it.
It's very suggestive.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, you see all of these, and again, some of these, not all of them have the star, but I was astonished when I started looking up online intelligence agency logos with the Sphinx or the Sphinx with the stars, and I was blown away. So what I suspect, just a second here, I'll just get to. Okay, so what I suspect is this knowledge about the link between the Sphinx and the star regulars came with the paperclip Nazis who were rehomed from Germany after World War II and who founded NASA, the CIA, and other government agencies. Hitler had been obsessed with the occult and sent researchers around the world to collect esoteric knowledge to weaponize it.
Okay.
So yeah, I figure that probably all the way back to the late 1940s,
Mm-hmm.
it has this link between the star Regulus and the Sphinx has been known.
Okay. Can I
And
just
then you
ask
have to wonder about.
yeah, just a quick question here. I have somebody who asked an interesting question, Becca B. She
Uh-huh.
says, "Why does the triangle have a chevron shape on its tail each time?" That's kind of interesting. The logos. I don't know. Like it has like a chevron shape at the bottom.
I would not know, but
Okay.
believe me, I'm sure it's significant.
Yeah.
One of these days, I'm just going to have to do a deep dive into,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, you can't believe how much time just coming up with the images
I know.
of these, and then doing a deep dive into what they signify. And I don't think we would ever know. I'm sure that's like hidden into the symbology.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably
Okay.
find out. Anyways.
Oh, believe me,
Yeah.
this is the beginning of a lot of stuff coming
Okay.
up in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the lady kept her promise. As soon as the word got out about her visitations and prophecies, high ranking officials from NASA, CIA, NRO, NSA, DIA, FBI, British MOD, Air Force, and representatives from the Vatican, as well as scientists and academics, descended on his home,
The
often
Vatican.
just showing up,
The
just
va-
often
the.
just
Uh,
showing up his door and scaring his kids.
mm-hmm.
And here you have Hal Puthoff, CIA, who founded, for all of you who are familiar with remote viewing, he founded the Stanford Research Institute with CIA, remote viewing, what became known as the Stargate program,
Okay.
and was also a paranormal researcher. He showed up at their door. What's really interesting too is here James Simivan's 25-year career. Oh boy, I left out that year. Career in the CIA's National Clandestine Service, showed up at their house many, many times, befriended his children. And again, he's also an acknowledged experiencer of himself.
Okay.
Many of these officials, I would call them operative agents from these intelligence agencies, literally embedded them within the Bledsoe family. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But this is something I find very, very disturbing.
But just before you continue, what I find a bit disturbing is why is the Vatican there? What are they doing there? I understand all
Oh,
the other
the Vatican,
agencies.
and
I
believe me,
understand all that. But the Vatican? Really?
the Vatican
Okay.
knows everything. Believe me, the Vatican is interested too.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so perhaps the most get to the next one here. Perhaps the most enigmatic official to arrive unannounced is Tim Tyler, who was the director of NASA space shuttle missions. I mean, this guy was up there. Tyler flashed credentials for every intelligence agency and the military. He also appears to be one of the few people in the world besides the Pope who has complete access to the Vatican archives. Tyler brought a small piece of metamaterial that he placed in the hands of each of the Bledsoe family, but only Chris reacted as though he had been electrocuted. Tyler told him that no one has ever had that kind of reaction before. He then disclosed that the metamaterial was not from this Earth, that it comes from a galaxy 500 million light years away. Now, this is curious. Any qualified metallurgist could tell you the material is not from Earth, but how does he know where it came from?
Yeah.
That is a really interesting story. He is clearly, I would say, not of this Earth.
No.
When Chris asked Tyler why government officials were so interested in him, he was told that the beings will not interact with them or even talk to them. They all want to know, why you? Why you? You must be family. They were the intelligence agencies were studying the connection between the willingness of these beings and the lady to talk to him when apparently they were having nothing to do with. Now this brings up another question, and it goes directly against everything we hear about the UFO, the whole UFO story. According to him, and he's about as high in the, I would say, the UFO intelligence as they get, he was saying that these beings want nothing to do with them. Moreover, NASA's concerned because the beings harass their astronauts by showing up around the shuttles and looking at them through windows. Indeed, there's many reports of astronauts reporting strange creatures 125 feet long with wings smiling at them through the windows and swimming outside the shuttles.
I've heard that the Russian cosmonauts had that experience
Oh
as well.
yeah, I'm sure everybody who was up there, had these mysterious beings
Angel
up
things.
There
they look like
harassing
angels.
them.
Yeah.
I suspect they weren't harassing them. They were just amused or playing with them. Okay. So Chris must have passed some important tests because Tyler then escorted him on several private tours of Cape Canaveral. These included, and as you'll see the like sort of like mid left, these included the pre-launch astronaut crew quarters where no civilian has ever entered before. Chris also gave him a 24 karat gold OP pin that is only awarded to those who have been off planet. The cocktail napkin that was sent to him from Camp David in the upper right also proves that Tyler briefed President Obama on the Bledsoe story.
Okay.
And yet on the bottom right, this incredibly important and mysterious man was not only a frequent house guest, but he even attended Emily Bledsoe's homecoming queen coronation. There he is in the middle.
Boy, they really embedded themselves deep. Huh?
I mean, talk about embedding yourself in the family. I mean, this is just a handful. I mean, they all did.
I mean, I'm expecting you to say he got married to one of them. I don't know. I mean, it's.
Oh no, he was already married.
Okay.
He was already married.
Wow.
So it should be noted that the 4 hours Chris spent aboard the craft in 2007, and both interactions with the lady were revealed via hypnotic regression. The missing time by a Harvard psychologist trained by Dr. John Mack, and his interactions with the two interactions with the lady, with Barbara Lamb, who I'm sure you know is a highly respected hypnotherapist in the world of experiencers. The use of hypnotic regression seems to be of no concern to the high-level government officials who beat a path to his door. Further tests on Bledsoe's reaction to the metamaterial was done at the Monroe Institute with the same results. Okay, now we go 2009 to present. So after the ladies' appearances in basically Easter 2012, 2013, Chris was being investigated by just about every official agency in the world, but he was unable to fulfill his obligations to the lady to wake up the world to the new knowledge. Rheumatoid arthritis had completely disabled him with crippling pain and fatigue. Like he was wheelchair bound, could not walk, he could not use his hands, he was completely immobilized. On January 8, 2019, exactly 12 years after the incident at the river, Chris felt compelled to go out to his pond. An orb suddenly appeared out of the water, out of which a being emerged with colors spinning out of an orb that was within it. When Chris woke up the next morning, still dazed, the messages he had not heard the night before came through. We will allow you to film us more and share with witnesses. Share the truth. Difficult times coming. Just as the Crohn's disease had miraculously disappeared, the rheumatoid arthritis was gone. Since the meeting the being at the pond, Chris followed up on the podcast interviews and conference invitations he had been ignoring due to ill health. He has since been able to film more than 2,000 orbs, and he has spoken at numerous major conferences and scientific meetings, been interviewed on dozens of online podcasts, and published his book, UFO of God, in 2023. In 2024, Chris was on the road for 35 weeks out of 52. With regulars due to shine into the eyes of the Sphinx around Easter 2026, less than a year from now, I believe that Bledsoe's story is a call to action. The lady said we have free will to choose to live or die, to live and die in fear, or live in peace and with love and compassion. In other words, we can choose an apocalypse, which will bring a new knowledge, return of the divine feminine, and 1,000 years of peace. And keep in mind that the goddess-headed cultures prevailed for 30,000 years with no evidence of conflicts or wars or even weapons. Or we can choose to continue the path humanity has been on for the past 5,000 years, when man energy has dominated. Without the balance of the mother energy, humanity has engaged in near continuous conflict and strife, leading to massive death and destruction for both humanity and the earth itself. In 1947, Einstein and Oppenheimer came up with the idea of a doomsday clock to measure how close we are to self-annihilation. At the end of January 2025, it was set at 89 seconds. Just 3 months later, the clock was reset at 75 seconds. We lost 14 seconds in 3 months. Put starkly, Armageddon may be only seconds away, and yet the lady is clear that if we do not wake up, it is not the earth, but humanity that will be gone. So we have a new perspective on the UFO phenomena and orbs, starting off with orbs and portals. Do I still have time?
Because we're just on an hour, so we can start to take some questions.
Yeah, let's start a little late. So I tried to have this, so it was 50 minutes, but we got started off a little late.
Yeah.
So orbs and portals, of which much of the whole Bledsoe experience revolves around. So the cover of Chris Bledsoe's book, UFO of God, was very well chosen. It shows it's a photograph of Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, Savior of the World, which he painted around 1500. You'll notice what he has in his hands. He has an orb, and it even has 3 lights in it, triangles in it. This painting, by the way, sold for $450 million to a Saudi oil prince. But anyway, this is so this got me thinking, well, where else am I going to find orbs in medieval paintings? And my problem then became, which do I include and which do I leave out? I found so many. So here you can just see some samples. The orb in these early paintings, these early medieval paintings, the orbs appear everywhere.
Okay, wow. Pretty much, huh?
Yeah, and then you have the portals. I started looking in and finding out, my goodness, look at the
that someone's disappearing like Stargate. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
What's that about?
They're disappearing through a portal.
And again, the feet are hanging? Oh my God. Okay.
No, they're rising up through it. And in fact, the painting on the far left was a painting that someone at the Vatican sent him from their Vatican archives. And I'm assuming this is St. Francis. And again, then I was just astonished again. I found so many paintings that include, and again, these paintings were not spec paintings. These would have been commissioned by the church.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wonder, what do they know?
Well, if the Vatican shows up at Chris Bledsoe's door, then
that's right. And here's just some more. I mean, my problem was, which do I choose to put in and which do I leave out?
Mm.
Okay, and then a new perspective on the UFO phenomena with the Marian apparitions. I was vaguely aware, but before the Chris Bledsoe story came to my attention, I was aware of the Lady of Fatima, aware of the Lady of Guadalupe, but pretty much knew nothing much more about them. Mm-hmm. And as I dived into it, it's like a whole world opened up. Mm-hmm. I mean, just this unbelievable world opened up. Mm-hmm. And then she, like she said, the lady who appeared before Chris said she had appeared many times before. So I started looking up Marian apparitions that have occurred, over time. And I discovered what I thought was the most extraordinary story never told. What you are seeing here is a painting of a true event. I mean, this is documented. You can see the bottom right, Russian armies in Poland meet disaster, 75,000 prisoners taken.
Okay.
What you're seeing is a painting of an incident that happened over Warsaw in 1920 After Lenin and the Bolsheviks basically took over Russia, they were hell-bent on converting the world to communism. And they were going hell-bent into Europe to basically, again, convert the world to communism by every brutal means that were possible. As they were arriving towards 100,000 strong Red Army, as this army was approaching the Vistula, across which was Warsaw, everybody in Poland knew that they could not defeat them. They could not battle them. They asked for help from other nations. The British simply told them, surrender and hope for mercy. So they did something absolutely extraordinary. They had interceptions by what they called the Black Madonna back in the 1300s and again in the 1700s, where a Madonna figure, a lady, intervened in some affairs that kept the invaders out. The night before the 100-strong Red Army was to cross the Vistula and come into Warsaw, everybody in Poland literally prostrated themselves and prayed for what they call, it's the Lady of Czechowa, the Black Madonna, to intercede in their behalf. She shows that morning above the Polish army. Can you see?
Yeah.
Can you see? Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the Polish army is over here, and it was basically made up of old men and Boy Scouts, a ragtag, whatever they could put together.
Mm-hmm.
They could not see, but there was a cloud above them that showed, and here's another rendition of a lady with a sword and a spear with her celestial army. It appeared above the Polish army. They couldn't see it, but the Russians would. The Red Army could. They turned around and fled. They would fight the Poles, but they would not fight the mother. And you remember, for hundreds of years before the Bolshevik takeover, the Russians had basically been Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is an absolute true story.
Wow,
And
that's okay. But are you saying that it came like these people, like the army came as a result of like
of the Poles getting down and praying for the intervention of this
okay,
plane, what they call the Black Madonna, because
okay,
over the centuries, Soot and whatever there was a statue of her, and over the centuries, her skin looked black, so she was referred to as the Black
mm-hmm.
Madonna.
Okay.
That they prayed for her intervention. And here is another painting of the same thing, where you can see, here what the Red Army saw was this lady with sword and shield with her celestial army. I mean, and it's documented. This is real. I thought this was the greatest story never told, but
Wow,
it's not.
that is because I've never heard of this at all.
Well, nobody has.
No.
Nobody has. It's only because I was poking around. Well, where else has the lady, the mother, the lady in white has appeared.
Mm.
So anyway, and then I came across this, which I think truly is the greatest story never told. This is a painting of a report that George Washington made during the darkest days of the rebel army. In fact, God, I don't even know if I have even time to. What I'll do is just read a little backstory here,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the end, you really need to have me read this report that Washington gave to one of his officers.
Can you just give us like a quick synopsis?
I will just do a little summary of what he saw. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the end, if you're interested in the actual report that he gave.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, in the winter of the winter of 1777, during the American Revolution, prior to General Washington's vision at Valley Forge, the Continental Army had suffered defeats in the battles of Brandywine and Germantown. The British forces occupied Philadelphia, the capital of the colonies at that time. A brutal winter was coming on, with temperatures falling far below freezing. There was near famine. The situation grew desperate as the winter set in with gale winds on the plains of Pennsylvania. Clothing was scarce, and some soldiers had no shoes and wrapped their feet in rags. Trails of blood could be seen in the snow where they walked. Amputations were common. Disease set in, as many as 3,000 troops died. Defeat and surrender seemed inevitable. British forces could be destroyed. British forces could have destroyed the Continental Army before winter, but chose not to, which was a grave mistake on their part. They instead decided to wait out the winter and prepare to take care of the colonists in the spring. This is just a okay. So for many years, this is just a short thing. I won't read like the 4 pages
Yeah.
of what the thing is. Okay, so for many years, copies of Washington's vision at Valley Forge had been in existence. The story of Washington's vision was first published in the U.S. war veterans paper, the National Tribune, now called the Stars and Stripes, in 1859, from an account given by Anthony Sherman, an officer who served under George Washington at Valley Forge, to a writer named Wesley Bradshaw. The story was reprinted in 1880, 1931, and the latest in Stars and Stripes in 1950. They all contain the story that was published in 1859. And according to the original published story, Washington used the phrase that a singularly beautiful female, suddenly appeared in his tent.
Okay.
And then in his vision, Washington sees three great perils to overtake the Union. The third and the greatest to be fought on the soil of the U.S. near the time of Jesus returning to reign on earth. It is this peril that I think we should be concerned about now because of the times we're living in. So when you consider who George Washington is, it seems unlikely that he would have imagined this. But you can see this painting that somebody did of this vision that he had. Again, it would take me a couple of minutes to read the rest of it. But what I found remarkable about this painting, and this, of course, this is modern day, the three perils, which I believe is we are coming upon, is that you have the painting of Bledsoe's lady, which he had done right around 2019. And then this painting was painted at exactly the same time. Here's a picture of George Washington's lady, and there's a Lady of Fatima. But when you look at them, it's very unlikely, because at that point, Bledsoe had just come out with his story, and the painter had just painted this. It's very unlikely they had crossed paths, and yet she's exactly the same lady. I mean, her dress, hair, face, everything. She is the same lady. And she also floated above the ground, which Bledsoe's lady did. And here again, it's just a Lady of Fatima, and you can see the similarity here.
Okay.
So anyway, that to me is the greatest story never told, because, and again, this it's something that really happened, and it's something that we should read about in our civics books, but we don't. The three perils are really frightening, though, because I think we're living in the third one right now. So that's another story.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put in here with the Guardians. These are paintings that Chris Bledsoe did. He first cited the Guardians in 2007. He depicted the Guardians in 2009. And this is another guy, but it's not the Guardians. And then you look at the Chilburton crop circle, where it says, "Beware of bearers of small false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception." Conduit closing. It's like the guy. It's an identical match, and you can be sure that Chris never having grown up, having lived in this extremely conservative, Christian conservative environment in North Carolina, you can be sure he knew nothing about these crop circles. And yet again, his depiction is exactly the same. And I would suggest that the bearers of false gifts are those who are landing gift UFOs to be back engineered, which we're hearing all about, so that they can be weaponized.
Yeah, exactly.
And I suspect that Chris Bledsoe nailed it. That this is exactly what they were. That's exactly what they are warning against. Okay, so we have the old perspective on the UFO phenomena, imminent, which implies impending danger, peril, and threats. So is Elizondo a message of the dark force at the helm of humanity, and the lady and the 2002 crop circle warned us against? and or you have the new perspective on the UFO phenomena. UFO, God implies UFOs are manifestations of God. Is Chris Bledsoe a messenger of God, heralding the age of Aquarius with its new knowledge, return of the divine feminine, and 1,000 years of peace? So the key takeaways, I'm coming to an end. So the key takeaways would be: embrace the unknown with curiosity and humility.
Okay.
Speak out despite ostracism and ridicule. Be open to spiritual awakening beyond religious drama. Prepare for multiple government agencies to disclose UFO information in 2025. No academic, intelligence, and scientific communities are studying the enigmatic nature of the beings and their message. And that love, compassion, and forgiveness are the universal God force.
I actually had an interesting question from Becca B. She said, "What are the three perils?" That's a good question. What are the three
Well,
perils?
again, that is, if you wanted me to read his story, I mean, the actual report, it only take about 5 minutes. The actual story that was published, the report that Washington gave to his officer, that eventually was published in the Stars and Stripes, or what was
Well,
then
maybe
the
we
National-
could read that at the end, because I want to sort of
we
get
are
to...
we are now at the end.
Oh, okay. But I just wanted to just sort of just talk a bit before we get to the three perils.
Yeah.
So we're at the end. So is that it, or can you come back and so we can see you?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to try. I'm gonna try.
Whoops.
Yeah. So this whole thing, I mean, this whole Bledsoe experience.
I think you need to press stop share. I think you need to press stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
There's that little red box. Stop share.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, stop share. There it is. Okay.
There it is. Yeah.
I don't do many Zooms, so it's like I'm never. So anyway, it's so many things. So many things came into my mind that I realized, my God, am I a babe in the woods? First of all, there are a number of things that his story really highlighted. It's the whole phenomenon of orbs. He made it very clear. This experience made it very clear, and the seriousness that virtually every intelligence agency, plus the Vatican, blah, 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 how seriously they took it, is that orbs are like the origin, the original, the plasma balls are the original force out of which UFOs, beings, I mean, everything else come out of. The UFOs are, the orbs are UFOs.
Okay.
But also, then you have the Age of Aquarius. You know, the return, first of the return of the divine feminine. So what does that mean? So I am basically going to be doing an intensive study, a deep dive into not only the divine feminine, what it is, the Marian apparitions, and boy, I'll tell you, once I started looking into it, I couldn't believe it. There are like 50 documented Marian. They just call them Marian because they're, the Catholic Church sort of like hijacked the phenomenon and put Mary on it. So like the Virgin, they would like to think these are appearances of the Virgin Mary, but like with the Chris Bledsoe sighting, and even with the Lady of Fatima, they do not identify themselves as Mary. So, but they're referred to as Marian apparitions. But getting into it and realizing that, my God, there are at least 50 of these that have been documented.
Yeah.
And so I want to get, and I'm going to do a big spreadsheet, where I have like all, at least the very minimum, the 50 documented apparitions. And then like across the top, but well, when did they appear? What appeared? What did they look like? Were they solid? Were they holographic? Did they speak telepathically? Did they speak with their voice? Did they give a message? Did they give warnings? I mean, all the way across. Just try to figure out, are there patterns? Are there patterns over time? Because many of these, like the Lady of Guadalupe, she goes back 500 years to Mexico.
Yeah.
At what do you start seeing patterns? If you line them all up and all this phenomena up, are there patterns up there?
No.
But again, this is that I think, there are those people who seem to there are Mariologists. Believe it or not, and a lot of people who are really into Mary Magdalene, but like that's the iceberg.
Yeah.
That's
But
absolutely the tip of the iceberg.
so let's go back a little bit to some of the
Mhm.
things that so some of the things that we were talking about
Mhm.
in the presentation. And
Mhm.
so one of the things
Mhm.
that struck me was the fact that, again, about the symbol of the Space Force and why they have an Egyptian symbol. Because you know what's interesting is what I remember hearing about how when they did the first moon landing, they did
Mhm.
an Egyptian ritual on the moon. And I remember hearing about, I think one of the astronauts, I can't
Mhm.
remember which one,
Yeah.
but he said that they did an
Mhm.
Egyptian ritual
Mhm.
on the moon that they
Mhm.
had to do, but they didn't really tell anybody. And it was only later on that they came out and said, "Okay, this is what we're doing."
Yeah.
And it just sort of makes me wonder if
I think they have. I think that knowledge came over with, again, those papercut Nazis right after World War II. And again, Hitler was obsessed with the occult, and
yeah,
somehow they knew of this prophecy and they brought it over. So I suspect, and then you have to think now, if this prophecy has been known for the last 70 years, and he has been telling he had his first experience of sighting in 2007, made the MUFON report in 2008, and then had the two visitations with a lady in 2012 and 2013. The powers that be know this. They know that she is saying, and basically in 2026, I really want to get into what the new knowledge is too. And I think the
okay,
new knowledge is the old knowledge of the goddesses, thousand going back thousand. So anyway, how are they dealing with? Are they hanging on with their fingernails, trying to maintain this what she called that violent man energy? I would say right now what we're seeing in the U.S. in Washington with Trump is like this grandstand hanging on by their, like again,
oh, but
by their
absolutely,
toenail,
absolutely. But you know what?
to try to maintain what they've had for the last
Absolutely,
5,000 years,
yeah,
knowing that this prophecy has been there.
yeah.
And
But
then to the other thing about, so it was the new knowledge, which I think is the old knowledge going back to the goddess cultures for 30,000 years, but also that thousand years of peace. Well, all you have to look is at the Minoan civilization, which was destroyed when Santorini exploded and there was a gigantic
yeah,
tsunami. But anyway, it was a goddess culture. They had no armies. It was strictly trade. So for 1,000 years, they built up this incredible, what visitors would describe as a fairyland, which is what you can do if you spend your money on your culture rather than on war.
yeah,
And then the other thing is the Indus Valley civilization, which was on the Indus Valley, which comes between like
yeah,
Pakistan and
yeah,
India, and it goes back 6,000 years.
yeah.
And when the British, after the British brutally colonized India, they were putting in a railroad down along the Indus River, and they start unearthing all of these all of these artifacts from this huge civilization, millions of bricks. I mean, this civilization that went for hundreds of miles and entailed multiple cities that had been completely buried in the sand. So again, it was something that was not destroyed by war or conflict or anything like that. It was destroyed from climate change. But anyway, as the British were digging through there, and then they started excavating, they just they were thoroughly confused because they could find they thought it was a culture of children because all they could find were toys. They could not find a single weapon, even though this was a civilization that it had existed for thousands of years.
Okay, that's very strange.
And
Um,
what's even more telling is that when they were unearthing, excavating dwellings, they saw that every dwelling. Now this goes back in 6,000 years. Every dwelling had indoor plumbing and sewage. 6,000 years before London.
yeah, Yeah, for
They
sure.
got their first basically sewage system, water system, in 1858. Until then, they were throwing slop out the windows.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this is what you can do when you're not spending all your time and all your money and resources fighting.
Hmm.
And I think this is what the lady's saying. With the new knowledge is the old knowledge
Exactly. But you know what
that we
though?
left behind.
But you know what though? I think what's
Mhm,
happening here, and I just want to sort of make a couple of points, and then I'm going to get to
mhm,
some of the
mhm.
comments that people are making.
Uh-huh.
But what I think is happening here, and you're right, we're going back to the old knowledge, and so we're
Mhm,
basically
mhm,
uncovering that which we knew before, and
mhm.
so it is. As we've been going through this cycle, and sometimes people look at it, they say, for example, the Kali Yuga and the Tetra Yuga cycle that we
Uh-huh.
go through, and that we've been through the I think it's the bronze, which is like the cycle where it is really just mechanical and
Mhm,
machines, and it's very masculine.
mhm.
And I don't want to, when I say masculine, I don't want to sort of poo poo on the guys, because there's a lot of talk about how we sort of throwing eggs at the guys. It's not it. I think it's just more of it's a balance of energies, because in every
It was the
man,
lack of balance. It was
exactly,
all
it's a lack
about
of balance. So,
once the guy shoved the ladies to the
hmm,
side, and like now, the patriarch. I suppose like probably 95% of the societies around the world are
hmm,
patriarchal. They're
yes.
just literally shoving the ladies aside. That
Hmm.
was their downfall.
Yeah. But that's the reason why because it's imbalance. So I don't want to sort of turn around and say, well, men are evil and stuff like that, because that's not it.
Oh no.
It's just more of a balance. But getting back to what the lady that Chris Bledsoe was
Uh-huh.
talking about, I found it interesting when you were reading of certain passages. You said that we would have I know that we're talking about the star of Regulus in 2026 and at
Mhm.
around Easter, so that's one thing. But you're also saying about something in 2025 and that there's going to
Yes,
be a shift. Did you want to
that
just sort of go
that
over
was
that again?
that Hal Provemeyer from NASA
Okay.
telling the Bledsoe family in 2008
Hmm.
that official UFO disclosure would happen in 2025.
Wow. Okay. So that's pretty hardcore, because here we are,
What's you know
you know?
what's interesting is that if they already know there's going to be this big event in
Hmm.
2026, are they covering their bases?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
and,
But that
I
goes
said,
back to what you're saying. That goes
yeah,
back to what you're saying about how you
yeah,
said,
mhm,
well, they're hanging on with, like, for dear life.
yeah,
And
that's right.
everybody's hanging on for dear
Mhm,
life, because
mhm,
don't forget
uh-huh,
that, like, this
mhm,
planet
mhm,
has
mhm,
been under control by the archons and a lot of different groups.
mhm, mhm,
And a lot of those groups are very negative, and they want to continue. It's like anybody else. It's like if you have a
yeah,
drug dealer somewhere in the
mhm,
jungle somewhere, they don't
mhm,
want to stop their drugs because
mhm,
they're making a lot of
uh-huh,
money. But after a certain while, you sort of bust the place, and then that's it. So it's
mhm,
sort of they're making too much money, and like you said, and you said something interesting, you said that they're feeding off fear, and so they're coming in, and you say that,
mhm,
sometimes you think to yourself, but why are all these wars happening, and all these butchery and debauchery and all that kind of stuff? What's wrong with people?
mhm,
And I think personally, I think it's because they come in, and they encourage people, they possess people to act crazy like this, and to
mhm,
bring about fear. And so
mhm,
what's the best way to bring about a large amount of fear is to have war, and to have, like, famine, and
mhm,
to have any kind of, like,
mhm.
a
But see,
scary time. It's perfect. So they feed
mhm,
off fear,
mhm,
and I think they
mhm,
call it loosh or
mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
they
Mhm,
eat it. It's a sustenance. But I mean, I think what's happening is that this, as with anything, there's always a cycle, and the cycle
mhm,
is now shifting. And as much
mhm,
as I know that, yes, what we see in the news, and don't forget again, the news is manufactured. What is it manufactured to do? To bring about fear, to bring about
yep,
confusion, and
yep,
to bring about a sense
mhm,
of helplessness. And one of the
mhm,
things that a lot of people have said, even the Chabolton thing there, it's
uh-huh, mhm,
we have the power in our hands, and I think that people have to be very clear that we can set intention, we can change
mhm,
just by who we are. Like an example of the Polish setting
mhm,
down and praying, and just by praying, changing your environment, changing reality. And one of the things that they're starting to realize, a lot of scientists are starting to realize, is that this is a matrix. We are living in an actual
oh
matrix,
yeah,
and that in this
mhm,
matrix we
mhm,
actually
mhm,
have power
mhm,
to alter the matrix that we're living in. You can literally alter the matrix that you're living in just
mhm,
by
mhm,
thought alone.
mhm,
And so that's a lot of power. And I think what's happening now is that people are waking up to that power, and are waking up and saying, wait a minute, everything that I've seen, everything that I've believed, the school system, everything was a lot of BS. And now and I followed this BS for the longest time because I thought this is what I had to do. And people are starting to say, well, wait a minute. They're starting to take, the red pill and say, you know what, maybe it's time for me to sort of wake up and see the world for what it really is. And I think that's what's happening. And it's through that waking up, it's through that augmented consciousness that people have in a larger setting. So more people are waking up, and as more people are waking up, that is what is going to shift the balance. And so all those archons and all those negative ETs are going to be, tossed aside. And that's sort of where we're at now. I don't know. I think that's
one of the issues I find concerning is that she says that the divine feminine will return. And again, this is an area of research I am going to do a deep dive into for a future presentation, whatever. But also that women will regain their power. I don't think most women are prepared to regain their power. I think, look at how many women voted for Trump.
Well, but that's like, that's just, again, that's fear, because a lot of people are saying, well, under Trump, I had more money and all that kind of stuff. It's a fearful thing.
Yeah, how do you get over the fear? Because if women don't know that they're soon become the leadership, you just don't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, but you know what though? I think that, and I want to just sort of stress that it's yes, women can find their their sense of power, and to find that, the divine feminine, the goddess within. But at the same time, I think that it's also just about humanity. It's about men and women finding the divine feminine, and the divine feminine is not about women. Okay, it's not about women.
It's not going to be in the media.
It's not. No, but that's what I'm saying. It's not in the media.
We have a year. We have less than a year.
Yes.
To have this big turnaround.
Yes.
And I don't see any big movement out there.
Yeah, but you don't have to have a big movement. No. You don't need to have a big movement. What needs to happen is that if you start to see, and if, as they say, in 2025, there's going to be the revelation of the final disclosure. Now, you remember, for those of us who are old enough, like, Gen X and all that kind of stuff, if you're old enough to remember that TV show from the 80s called V. And in that TV show, what it opens up, the opening up, segment shot is that you have this massive UFO slowly floating down into the valley, into Los Angeles. And it's just this big, and it's just sort of floating around. And it's not making any noise, it's floating around. And one of the characters is looking up and he sees it and he's like, oh my God. And what happens in that movie is that they come and they present themselves and they say, this is who we are. And they had ships all around the planet. Now, I can tell you, if that happens, you're going to have a consciousness shift right there. Because that's what was happening. Now, mind you, they went in a negative sense, but, God forbid, I hope it's not going to be a V. I hope it's going to be a more positive thing. And that if the lady or whoever, they are coming down and are presenting themselves, you're going to shift the planetary consciousness in a heartbeat, because people are going to see and say, okay, now everything that I've known is now tossed in the garbage. That's a shift right there. That's a paradigm shift right there.
Then you leave chaos. It's like people are being asked to make this absolute turnover. Because, for the last 70 years, for the most part, UFOs have been debunked. So so people, we could have been prepared over the last 70 years. The populations around the world could have been prepared for this. Yeah. But it has been the exact opposite. Yeah. And so how do you get people who have been told, told to debunk all of this, suddenly, I think it would totally uproot everything.
It's going to uproot some people. Some people are going to be, it's not going to be clean and then like the TV shows.
Indigenous people, whatever, a lot of the Indians, a lot of people, but I think particularly in cultures, I think the scientific communities, the fundamentalist religious communities, the academics, a lot of these communities that are, they are set in the, what would you call it? This scientific materialism.
Academia.
Academia. They're going to have they're the ones who are going to have it the worst.
That's too bad. Because I came
she says you either make the change or you're gone. Well, but see, I feel that if people like me, we've got to start getting out there because we have a totally unprepared population. And Chris Bledsoe, he's largely talking to the UFO people.
Yeah.
On the podcast, everything he's on, they're for the he just talked that he just gave a presentation at the Contact in the Desert. Granted, it's like 10,000 people, but 10,000 UFO people.
Yes,
it's not like he's appearing. It's not like he's appearing, on 60 Minutes or in the New York Times or Fox or anyplace else.
Yeah,
it's like he's still marginalized. He's talking to the already converted, leaving 99% of the population who don't have no clue who he is.
Okay, but you know what though? I was watching a documentary the other day on Gaia, and I think it's called Amongst Us or something, and it's done by Carolyn Craner or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
And she says, and I think it was actually Barbara Lamb. Actually appeared in that documentary. And one of the things that they were saying, also David M. Jacob appeared in that. He's a big researcher, David M. Jacob. And he's talking about how he says that one of the things that he realized in his research is that this is not an American phenomenon. This is a worldwide, global phenomenon. And that there are people from all walks of life, all religions, all creeds, all races, everybody. And around the planet that are having these experiences, but they don't talk about it. So as much as it seems that we're like, oh, okay, it's only about, a handful of UFO people that know this, you also have to understand that there are a lot of people that have had these experiences that have kept it private because they don't want to end up like Chris Bledsoe. They don't want to end up that way. They don't want to end up being ridiculed and marginalized by their societies. And so they keep it to themselves, but they know. And so if you have millions upon millions of people around the planet who have had firsthand account and their experiences and they know about this, when that big ship finally comes and, is there, they're going to know. You see? So I get where you're coming from, where you're like, oh, what's happening? People are going to be freaking out. But I rest in a more positive perspective when I think that if all these millions of people are having these experiences, it's not going to be the apocalypse that they talk about. It's instead going to be like, finally, it's out there. Now I can breathe because I've been carrying the secret all along. I can now breathe and say, look, this is what I've been trying to tell you, and this is what I've experienced, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot more people that are awake and aware than we give credit for.
Well, I think there's certain populations that are really going to get hit hard. Again, you have the scientific community that is embedded in the paradigm of scientific materialism, and I think and the academics that go along with it. But also, the Christian fundamentalists. I think the Catholics will be just fine because the Pope came out years ago and said, well, if ET comes here, we'll be gladly baptize them.
Exactly.
So the Vatican already inoculated themselves and the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Catholics.
Yeah, they knew. Yeah, they've known for a while.
The people like what Chris and the people that like Chris Bledsoe lives with, and they're exactly they are as bad, if not worse now. They are going to. There's going to be no place for this. They are going to come apart.
But
so the scientific community, you have fundamentalists who have one view, and that they are literally they're.
But you see, that's the problem, though. But you see, that's the problem, because in order for us to grow in consciousness, for order for this planet, for humanity to become human galactus, the next stage in human development and consciousness, you're going to just have to crash through that paradigm, and I mean, we cannot wait behind. I cannot wait for you to catch up. I can't, either you catch up or you don't. And I think they're going to be able to sort of,
I think that's what she's saying. She's saying that those who can't deal with it are going to be gone.
Well, then that's it. Then there you go. So case closed. Okay. So I have a couple of comments that I want to read from the audience. We've been getting a lot of comments, and I just wanted to sort of, I have Anna here, who at one point, I think I'm not sure which slide that was. She says, which species is the bald, big-eyed person and the long, white-haired person in the last two screens? Are these likenesses or actual beings? I think it's when you were showing us some of the beings that were coming into his room, if I'm not mistaken. But
those were like holographic. I suppose they kind of look like tall grays.
Okay,
Yeah,
but did they
they were,
have a white-haired person in the last two
no,
screens? I
no,
don't know.
none of them had hair.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's see here. I have here Becca. She says another interesting symbol. I think this goes back to your idea of the Marian concept.
Uh-huh.
Is the Farian cap, for example, that Marian, the symbol of the French Revolutions, wears. I don't know. I guess we'd have to sort of take a look at what they wear, the French
Yeah,
Revolution.
I'm not familiar.
I'm not familiar with that as well. I have a Eternal student here who says, I've witnessed a NHI woman, a non-human, I guess a non-human entity woman with long blonde hair and a light blue dress. She had dainty features and could pass as human. And it was a very strange event that left my mind spinning with questions. Well, I think it would definitely leave my mind spinning with questions as well, because again, a lot of people are starting to see things. A lot, and what's interesting, a lot of people are starting to say. I saw this documentary, the one I was talking about on Gaia, and they said they were taken into a big, large craft, and they said it was a bunch of people
Yeah.
in the craft. A lot, and he says, I recognize some of the people that were there. So people are being brought on board,
Yeah.
and it seems that they're doing a program where they're getting people ready. They're
Well,
absolutely getting people
it
ready and
could
telling
it
them
could,
that, look, this is what's
yes.
going on. So there's an education program happening somewhere where they grab a bunch of people, put
Yeah,
them in a
it could well
craft,
be that
and there you go.
there could be millions of people who have been on the craft, who have gotten downloads. And one of the things that he talks about in others, anyway, this concept of downloads, there could very well be millions, tens of millions, a billion people, whatever, who have had the download and don't know it. Who have this embedded connection and don't know it, so that when it does happen, they'll be prepared for it.
Yes.
But I know for a fact that, see, with the Christian fundamentalists like Chris Bledsoe, it's still, anything to do with that stuff is demonic. It is satanic to this day. They're
Yes.
going to be very, very hard hit,
Well,
because there's going to be no room for anything that diverts from their truth.
but you know what, though? At the same time, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot of recently is that they're saying that when they finally have disclosure, one of the first things that they're going to do is they're going to teach us about our history. And I know that Bashar, who channels, Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, he says that one of the first things they're going to do is to teach us our history. And I've heard that from other different species, different beings as well that have come down, and they've spoken with people, and they said the first thing they're going to do is teach us our history. So we're going to know our history. Now, one of the things that also happens when you encounter beings from another world is that they're able to speak with you telepathically. So they're probably going to be able to telepathically tell people information and to send information into their heads. For example, during the Phoenix Lights in 1997, they said that a lot of people saw the craft coming down, and they said that they all of a sudden were hearing a message in their head, and they're saying, don't be afraid, we're just
Yeah.
trying to show who we are to your world governments, that sort of thing. So they're able to get into people's heads and maybe calm the fears and explain to them what's going on. So I think that it's going to be fine, because don't forget that they've been studying humanity for a long time, so they know the fundamentalists and all the Christian, all that kind of stuff. So they know how to deal
I
with
think
it. They
it's
know how
pretty
to deal
clear
with it.
when you read about again, you read about the contactees and experiencers. It's like you can have a group of 20 people, and 10 of them will see the craft and 10 of them won't.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like they're just, and I have a feeling that, again, there are going to be many people, tens of millions, if not billions, whatever, who have been already primed, that they're already wired to accept this new knowledge. But there's going to be plenty of people who won't. I mean, who are not wired to accept any of this. And again, she warns that not everybody's going to make it.
No,
But
not
I
everybody.
feel
No, and it's true. And the thing is, and I've also heard of of Dolores Cannon talking about that. Dolores Cannon, like I'm sure a lot of us know who Dolores Cannon was. She was a well-known hypnotist who was doing
yes.
a lot of past life regressions. For people who don't know, as I know we have a lot of new people, and she did a lot of past life regressions. And in those past life regressions, she started to notice that a lot of people were talking about past lives, but also talking about different Age of Atlantis, and they're talking about different beings and all that. And it's become clear that there's going to be one or two things. Either there's going to be the pulse, or like the big solar flash that takes care of people that are not, who are not willing to change, or, which is what I think is going to happen, is that because we talk about how we can create our own reality, don't forget we're living in a multiverse. And in the multiverse, we can choose to skip different timelines, and we can choose to skip different Earths, as it were. And so
Yeah.
there are people that, what I've heard, again with Bashar, is that there are people that are going to split. And you're going to have people that are wanting to go into the 5D consciousness and to evolve. And then you have those that want to continue working in the 3D matrix because this is something that it works for them.
Yeah.
If they're a young soul,
We might not even see them. We might not even, they may be in a different dimension.
Yeah.
From
Yeah, but they won't, they won't
Yeah.
understand. But that's the thing. So, and then one of the things that I heard is that people will just automatically disappear. Now, I don't know about that, but I think that if people disappear,
Who knows?
well, who knows?
Everything, everything is in the
Everything's
air.
possible. Yeah.
We don't, all we know is that if there's any validity, and it certainly appears that all the intelligence agencies around the world take this deadly seriously. So if they're taking this serious, and what I find remarkable too, is that, he gets so little attention among the UFO people. I mean, they are still embedded in the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
And crashed retrievals, and with Arrow, the UFO office that was set up in the Pentagon.
Yeah, I remember that.
Their stated mission was to capture, back engineer, and weaponize
Absolutely.
UFOs.
Exactly.
I mean, so much of the conversation you see out there in the UFO community is all about back engineer, the nuts and bolts of the fucking stuff.
Exactly, but don't forget that
they can't the spiritual side of it, they don't want to know about.
They don't want to know, because also don't forget that a lot of the people that are working in that kind of environment, you have to have a certain level of soullessness. Like if you're working in the military and you're doing all this kind of craziness and you're doing experiments and you're killing people and all that jazz, working for the CIA and doing Montauk Project, all that, there's a part of you that's not there. There's a part of you that's not human. So those kind of people can't even connect to the idea of a soul. They cannot connect to the idea of being, don't harm animals, don't harm creatures, all that kind of stuff. You have to have a certain level of heart to do that. And if your heart chakra is completely blocked off or completely not there, then that's what the military wants. Now, don't forget that when Eisenhower saw a lot of, saw some craft, and they also had that meeting in the desert, and he says that, look, we are not interested in, your cures for cancer or your cures for energy. We're not interested. We want weapons.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying to these people. And these people said, listen, we are not here for that. Right. We're not here for that. Exactly. But the next people that come behind us, those people are going to give it to you. And so what ended up happening, and this is what's happening now, was that when the Pleiadians left, and the Greys started coming in, because if you look at the history of UFO contact, around the late, I'd say around the late 60s up until like the 80s, 90s, there was a lot of contact with gray aliens. You don't really have that much gray contact with, let's say, in the 30s or 40s. It's interesting. But you have a lot of contact.
Oh yeah, there's all these evolutions.
Yeah, evolutions. But those grays, and maybe some are from Zeta Reticuli or not, but those grays came down and said, sure, no problem. We'll give you the weapons, but then now you have to allow us to kidnap people and to cut up cows and all this kind of craziness. So that's if you look at the UFO movement from, let's say, 1970 all the way up to 1995 or so, you see a lot of this crazy stuff going on and a lot of experiments and craziness in the desert and Area 51. It's because that's the kind of negative ETs that were attracted here and worked with it. And the reason why is because Eisenhower was, they were just coming out of a war, and they said we had more of a military a government as opposed to just a civilian government, and so that's the reason why they went after all the weapons. So that makes total sense. But I think that what's happening now is that we're having this shift on the planet, and this whole thing with Trump and what's happening in LA and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of distraction, but I'm not going to get into politics. But it's a lot of distraction. But you know what I find interesting?
Can I just inject
sure.
that? Being in the U.S. and being in Washington State, which is a blue state.
Yeah.
We're just up the road from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I believe it is a huge distraction for something else that they're doing behind.
Exactly.
That they don't want people to look here instead of there. So they get everybody obsessed about all this the protests, all this stuff going on, so they can pull these shenanigans under our faces, and all the media
Yes.
will be down there.
Yeah.
And again, all this bad stuff, God knows what they're doing, but they can do anything behind our faces
Yeah.
while we're doing that.
But you know what though? And it's interesting because we're talking about how we are on the verge of contact. So we're not sure when in 2025, but let's
Yeah.
say in the month of July, because I know astrologically there's going to be some big shift going on. I think with the the planet Mars in the month of July, and that's going to really change a lot of things astrologically. So maybe that might happen. Who knows? But if you have a system that is hanging on with their teeth and their nails and hanging on and trying to keep this whole matrix going on, the evil empire from
Yeah.
Star Wars, if you have them trying to do
Yeah.
that, then, I mean, they're going to try to distract you because it's through distraction that you don't pay attention to the signs,
Yeah.
within yourself,
Yeah.
because if you're with the phone and all that kind of stuff, you're not paying attention, you're not getting the messages all the time. But what's interesting is that a lot of people have said, I don't watch the news anymore. I don't watch TV anymore. A lot of people
I
have
don't watch
switched
the
off.
news.
Exactly.
I,
So
I,
that's
I get
that's
these
what
little
I'm saying.
thumbnails. Yeah,
I know. But that's what I'm saying. So the reason why, if you're not watching TV and you're not watching the news and you're not listening to the radio and all that kind of stuff, you're blocking off all that BS and all that distraction and all that kind of
That's
stuff
right.
coming in. And it's from that perspective that I feel that people are going to be much more clear channels to accept the information and to accept the downloads that are going to come in. And it's that sort of thing that I think is more what's happening, because I actually have an interesting comment here from Eternal Student. It says, I think the current technology allows for the average person to accept the possibility of an advanced race cohabitating with us. And Becca B says, I agree. People are much more open and aware nowadays. And a lot of people are open and aware, because I know when I work in a day job like anybody else. And I know that when I was talking about, aliens 15 years ago, people were like, oh, wow, she's real crazy. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on with her? And I mean, I got some of that, but I didn't care. I've been on this journey for a long time, so I really don't care. But now I go into the office and you have a lot of people who are talking about UFOs like it's meh. People are open.
But I think what they're talking about is like the nuts and bolts. Well, are we alone in the universe? I don't think once you start
No, but they
getting
will
into
ask. No,
the
but
really deep weird stuff, I think that's a whole
yeah,
different
but there's the
thing.
nuts and bolts. But there are also people that are saying that I'm willing to accept that we definitely have there's life out there. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if it's real or not, but I'm willing to entertain the possibility that there's other life out there in
But what
addition to the
about
nuts and bolts. That
yeah.
sort of thing. So
I'm not so sure that they can, if they came out and said, well, we have an entirely different history. There have been civilization upon civilizations that we were created as a slave race, to work in the gold mines or whatever.
Yeah.
That we are not at the top of the heap. We are at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah.
I'm sure if our whole world is turned upside down with a new reality, see, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I can accept the fact that we're not alone in the universe, but what about the really deep woo-woo stuff?
Yeah.
That will challenge everybody.
Yeah, but why does it have to come? But why does it have to come down like a big avalanche, like a falls? Like, I mean, why does it have to be that way? You could take it one day at a time. You can take your time and say, you know what? If that information becomes available, you say, you know what? I'm not ready just yet. I'm going to take my time and maybe educate myself slowly but surely. And I think that people are going to have that option to say, you know what? Yes, I'm a devout Catholic, and thank you for the information, but I'm going to take my time, and when I'm ready, I will accept it. Or there's people like me and yourself who are going to be like, whoa, give it to me, all that kind of stuff. So, I think it's just a matter of people that are taking it, slowly, day by day, and they're going to, and also, you would mention, they're going to talk about structures on the moon. Now, how long have we been talking about this? This is now about 25 years people have been talking about, actually no, 35 years, people have been talking about structures on the moon. People are saying there's structures on Mars. If they start talking about the structures on the moon, I mean, that's going to also open up the floodgates right there, because who built it, And I just feel that I think that people are yeah, there are people that are not going to be ready, but there's also going to be a lot of people that are going to be
Mhm.
curious. A lot of curious people. No, you're not
Yeah.
feeling it.
Well, my hope is that there have been enough downloads that people don't even know about. That
Exactly.
when it happens, it'll be like Chris Bledsoe.
Mm-hmm.
He had no knowledge whatsoever of previous contact until he was there out in the woods. These orbs show up, and he's been he recognizes it as something familiar,
Mm-hmm.
although prior to that he had no knowledge of it. So I would suspect that there might potentially be hundreds of millions, even billions of people who have already been primed,
Yeah.
and then the door will open, and it's oh,
Mm-hmm.
is this what they've been talking about?
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that is my hope. That again,
Yeah. Me
people have
too.
been downloaded with this information for the time when it becomes important to them, when the
Exactly.
truth is revealed.
Yeah,
So,
and you know what though, and also one of the things that we've often talked about on the show, from a more spiritual perspective, is that the so-called junk DNA is that DNA that is there to be activated, and it's that DNA that when it's activated will allow us to have that more connection, our cosmic connection. Because also don't forget that there's a lot of information out there. The Akashic records are there. You just have to learn how to connect
yeah,
to it. And I think that with the junk DNA, we're going to be. It's not junk. It's not junk, but you know what I mean. That
yeah,
DNA that is not being activated, that DNA will be reactivated, and we will be able to connect to that information. Similar to the way we connect, we go to Google. We used to do it in our heads, and we'll be able to connect with all that information because the information is just all around us. You just have to know how to
yeah.
access it and to bring it online within your body. So it's I think from that perspective, people are going to get those are going to be able to get more of those downloads and get that information. But
Mhm.
actually, a lot of people are getting downloads right now. I don't know. Have you been getting
Yeah.
downloads,
A lot of
Maureen?
people have had, yeah. And I just have a feeling that what's happening in the U.S. right now in
Mm-hmm.
California is just a hint of what's to come. It's like a prelude to
Mm-hmm.
what she's talking about, because I mean it's less than a year away, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the big. We're seeing the beginning of a whole new story evolve around us. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, on that note, I hope that you and your people have learned something from this, and that the
Yeah.
ladies out there, our time has come.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to empower ourselves because, according to Chris Bledsoe's lady, the power is going to shift to us,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got to be able to do something. We have to be able to shoulder this responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And can I just ask you one last question?
Mhm.
I just wanted to know what might happen in 2026 when the star Regulus is now seen in front of the Sphinx, or
Well, who
what?
knows?
Yeah,
I
what
mean, who knows?
does
I
she
mean,
talk about that though?
it could be not only that there will be a new knowledge, return of the divine feminine, and 1,000 years of peace,
Mm-hmm.
but it also, she makes it very clear that it's not a given.
Mm-hmm.
That it depends on what path we take, and you almost have to wonder if she isn't talking like about multiverses. We can, if we allow fear to rule us, and we go the way of basically damnation, Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it are they gonna anyway. It's hard to know, because again, we're less than a year away, and nobody is being prepared in any way. And if anything, like the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by the Fox News, came out just a couple of days ago and debunked UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very opposite of what should be happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know when they
So yeah.
debunk it though, people know that they're debunking it because they're trying. It's one last. It's basically, if they're going down, they're going to go down and scratching and clawing. They're not going to go down just like that.
Well,
They're
I,
going to
I
go
think that
out and then sit, try to deny UFOs and say stupid this and that. But people are not buying that though. But if
well,
they're
see,
trying,
The Wall Street Journal speaks for basically the military-industrial complex,
well, then there you
and
go.
they're the ones that are hanging on,
That's it.
by their fingernails.
Exactly. But
Yeah,
that's it.
they're
Exactly. So
doing
if
everything
you
they can. But the
Mhm,
thing is, if this is a reality, it
mhm,
doesn't matter. All it's going to be is that there's going to be that many more people who are unprepared
mhm,
for this eventuality.
mhm.
That's what I find deeply disturbing, is that there's going to be that many. And of course, who reads the New York Times or the Wall
Wall
Street
Street
Journal?
Journal.
Influencers.
Mhm,
These are the most important people, the people who speak with the most authority in our society read the Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
And if they debunk it, it's like they're going to carry an awful lot of people with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are challenging times.
Mm-hmm.
And
But don't.
I feel in a way that I'm a part of this enlightening the people because,
Mm-hmm.
and again, like Chris Bledsoe, she told Chris Bledsoe, if you don't go out and talk about this, you have blood on your hands. And I feel that one of the things I must do is, first of all, investigate orbs, this new knowledge, the divine feminine, and 1,000 years of peace, but really do a deep dive into the whole phenomena of the Marian apparitions, because it's real. How in the hell do you explain something like the lady over Warsaw?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mean, it's documented.
Yeah, but even also,
how do you even put that in your brain someplace that could actually occur?
But you know what though? What's interesting is that the sighting that took place in 1917 with the Lady of Fatima there, the one thing that they didn't talk about, and it's only later on that people found out, is that they actually, what people saw was actually a disc. A lot of people said they saw a disc. And a disc of light flying around. It would the I think it's the church that tried to change it and say, no, it's a lady, she appeared.
yes.
But it was actually a UFO. They saw a UFO. And people saw it, and like you said, thousands of people were there, but they just hid that. They hid that information. But you see, the information is coming out.
Yes.
But
But you know what's interesting too? As I started reading into these Marian apparitions, I just finished Ingo Swann's book, The 22 Greatest Marian Apparitions. Almost to a person, they condemn the Vatican and the bishops. They often have a very Catholic message, come back to the faith, believe in God, whatever, but have no time for the Vatican and the bishops. So, and that could very well, and then again, the Vatican, the bishops have been at the forefront in debunking this stuff. It's like they don't want anything to do with it, and I think to a large extent because there's a very negative message pointed at them.
But you know what though?
I mean, this whole thing.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Oh yeah, this whole thing to me is just incredibly fascinating, and I think really important. If we have changes coming up in less than a year, and so few people are, I mean, you and I, your listeners, your attendees, it would be stunning for us. It would be just completely discombobulating for even of those of us who are aware of it. Because I don't think anybody would be unaffected.
No, absolutely not. No. You can't have something like this flying around and people are not affected. No. That's very clear. But you know what, though? I see where you're a bit, how should I say, flustered about the idea of people not believing and debunking and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to bring something to your attention. You know the Condon report that came out? I think the Condon report came out in 62. I'm not sure.
69.
69. The Condon report came out, and Mr. Condon was very clear, and he debunked it. He didn't look at the information. J.L. and Hynek was like, what is this? You're not even looking. You don't care. They debunked it, and they've been debunking it ever since. And even though major portions of the government, the scientific community, the education community, the spiritual, like, the church, all that kind of stuff, have been debunking it. It hasn't stopped people from following it. If you go on Google, one of the top searches for Google is UFOs. People are aware. People want to know. And it doesn't matter that they've been debunking it. People have been debunking this thing for over 60 years. And yet, more and more and more people believe. More and more people are looking this up. You go on YouTube, and the tons of videos on experiences and UFOs, and there's like the third phase of Moon channel where they have all these UFOs and stuff. People are in it. So debunking be gone, because people are aware. So I don't think that debunking is going to do anything, because it hasn't done anything in the past. Why should it change now? There you go.
Well, we have less than a year to find out.
Well, we'll find out.
So I encourage all of your attendees, all of your people, I figure that the Starseeds and light workers and the experiencers are the people to listen to. We are, well, I shouldn't say we, because I'm none of those things, as far as I know. They have the true knowledge. They have the uncorrupted story. Because I would swear that 99.99% of what we're getting from the government, from the media, from all of those is part of a narrative that's been constructed since the 1940s.
Yeah.
So so all of your people, we all need to step up. And me as a communicator, we all have to step up, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of people who come to grief because they just don't know. They don't even know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Because it just comes out of the blue. So anyway, we have a huge job on our hands. And for me, I can't think of a more wonderful way to spend my time and to dive into this.
Okay. Well,
so particularly the Marian apparitions. That is the coolest topic. I mean, it's absolutely the coolest topic.
Well, you're gonna have to come back and talk to us about those things.
In a couple of months, I will be ready with a presentation on the Marian apparitions. Because believe me, the more, as I just did even a shallow dive in it, it's like, oh my God, it's like one that appeared over in Egypt. They had 1 million witnesses. Why don't we know about that? I mean, it's always, why don't we know about that? Why don't we know about that? Why don't we know about that? Why don't we? It's like this suppressed knowledge.
Absolutely, but it's all coming out, though. It's all coming out. So all those millions of people now.
People like you, but see, people like me and you guys are going to have to be at the forefront of getting this out, because it ain't going to come from the powers that be.
No, and we know that, though. But we know this already. We know that's not going to come from the powers that be. So even if they go give the so-called disclosure, people are already aware. So no, we're not expecting that. But you know what? You're going to have to come back in a couple of months to share your research with us.
When I have my treatise on Marian apparitions, believe me, it's already, I can see it's going to be a doozy.
Okay, well, we're gonna be waiting for you. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Maurene, for coming on the show and for speaking with us. I'm sorry that we had all these technical difficulties at the beginning. It's always like that, though, when you're doing live. So please forgive us. But I wanted to just say thank you.
It was fixed, and we got through it.
But I wanted to just say thank you again, Maurene, for coming and for giving us your perspective on things, and for sharing about the Chris Bledsoe story, because a lot of us, like you said, don't know.
You don't even have to necessarily buy his book, which is good too, because he has stuff in there. But he's been on 101 different interview podcasts. And I mean, some of them are 2-3 hours long. You can get everything you need from the podcast without going out and actually buying the book.
Exactly.
And I encourage you to do that, because I mean, if what she says is true, I mean, then you're ahead of the game.
Exactly.
This isn't going to come like a slap in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that's what I hope, is everybody will go out and at the very least tune in a Chris Bledsoe interview. There's a really good one on Matt Beal, another one on Danny Jones. But this was one last comment. Chris Bledsoe gave an interview on the Sean Ryan program, and he's got like 20 million listeners. Big deal. And Sean Ryan has acknowledged that he's a Christian fundamentalist. And I don't even know why he had Chris Bledsoe on, because he knows his position that the feminine divine is going to return in 2026. So Chris Bledsoe did this interview, and it must probably be 8 months ago. And then it didn't show up. And then it didn't air. And finally, Chris Bledsoe got online and says, why am I being censored? And finally, Chris Ryan put the interview on. But you know what he did? Because he's a Christian fundamentalist, he took out the divine feminine would be returning in 2026 and inserted Jesus.
Oh, no.
He adulterated the interview. And Chris Bledsoe came back and he screamed bloody murder on social media. The guy lied. That is not what I said.
That's some.
I mean, it completely.
Wow.
The guy.
Yeah, that's some macho bullshit. Anyways,
that is macho bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, on that note, we've got interesting times ahead of us.
Yeah, we do.
We've got an interesting weekend.
We're counting it down. We're on the clock. And we're counting it down. And when you come back again, we'll see where we're at. Maybe when you come back in a couple of months, we'll see that maybe something has happened. And then we have to sort of shift how we're going to do this. So, we'll do it from there.
Things may be changing this weekend when there's these protests that are going to be happening around the country
Yeah.
and finding out what happens, things may be changing as quickly as 4 days from now.
Exactly.
Believe me.
Exactly.
So,
Anyways,
okay, well, anyway, it was a delight. Thank you very much.
thank you so much, Maureen. Thank you.
Yeah.
You have to come back. And I want to say thank you again to all our listeners. We really appreciate
I
you.
hope they were inspired enough to act now.
Oh,
Because, again,
absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
Chris Bledsoe story is a call to action.
Absolutely.
Got
And
it.
that's how we're going to take it.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's a call to action, everybody. So all the Starseeds and light workers, we are counting on you to spread the word.
The world needs you.
Exactly.
Believe me, the world needs you.
We
Because,
need it.
again, it ain't going to come from the Pentagon. That is for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So thanks again, Maureen.
Thank you.
And thank you again, everybody. Please subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. And we hope to see you on Saturday. This Saturday, we're going to be having Miss Ross Place, who's going to be coming in and doing our presentations on how to get in contact with your guardian angels. So that should be interesting. So hope to see you on Saturday. Until then, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Maureen, for being with us. We really
Thank you,
appreciate you.
Crystal.
We'll see you in 6 months. Okay? We're going to see you in 6
got it.
months. Okay. So thanks, everybody. And don't forget to subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Maybe Saturday. Take care.